All right, welcome everyone. I'm Emily. I'm with Move United. Thank you so much for joining us today for the third webinar in our adaptive snowboarding series. This one will focus on how to start an adaptive program. And I would also like to introduce our guests. Kepi and Dan Gale are here with us. Thanks so much for joining us. Just a few housekeeping things. The session will be recorded for all of us and for others who want to check it out later. We're going to keep all the attendees on mute just so that we can minimize distractions. And please use the chat function to ask questions at any time. We'll address them later, but please ask when they come up. And thanks again for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Kep.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining in today. Thanks to Move United. I just jumped through there, saw some familiar names for sure. It's good to have some people back. Today we're going to discuss some programming side of snowboarding, and happy to have Dan Gale from Adaptive Action Sports join us today. And I believe Reggie is in a meeting right now, and he's going to be joining as soon as he can. Yeah, I've got a range of topics for today. And if Lily can, or Emily, if you can set up that first slide, Dan and I can cover quite a bit of this. So it's basically trying to get started with the program, what kind of equipment you're looking at, what kind of setups you're going to be having for your riders. So we've kind of covered some of this with the snowboards. Your snowboarding setup is going to be your number one key to getting connected with the snow. So in-house, whatever adaptive program you're working with, they're going to get you set up with your bindings, your gear, everything you have to get moving on snow. Some of those extra equipment items that we have, once again, are tethers, which that top picture, you can see somebody that's on tethers. That allows the instructor or coach to be able to give some direction. With the tethers, you can actually direct a front leg or trailing leg to help initiate some of those turns and help the participant control their speed. Some of the carabiners and things like that we use, and leashes, so to speak, we use for participants that might have been suffering from seizures. A lot of times we'll put a seizure belt on somebody that's had multiple seizures and has a doctor's order that's recommended. That way, once we load the lift, you can get somebody that's on the lift and have them tethered to the lift just in case something happens. They're tethered to the lift itself, so they're not going to go anywhere. Outriggers are a really cool tool that we use sometimes with riders. One of our buddies, Dan's buddy that rode with him for a while there, Carlos Figueroa, started out riding with outriggers and was able to ditch those after a few sessions on snow, and went on to compete in some World Cup events. So outriggers are another really important piece of equipment. Basically, it's an arm crutch with a ski on it, and you can use that on maybe a weaker side just to have a little more support, so you're not dropping your board and catching edges going downhill. That rider bar is another one that's really important. That rider bar is shown in that lower picture there. And if you have a coach or an instructor that's on one side of that, you can actually get quite a bit of direction and help people feel those turns and feel those edges and build some of that muscle memory until they can start sorting some of that out. This next section here, I was going to toss that over to Dan. Daniel, I'd mentioned to these guys earlier, just once you have your program set, you've got your own space, you've got some tuning benches and some additional equipment that you have for athletes and their prosthesis. So if you want to take over that next section there, just some of the other bits and pieces that it takes to have a program up and running.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. Um, so here at Adaptive Action Sports, we do have tuning benches. Those are critical component to your riding. Having a tuned board is not only safer, but it's good for your equipment. So tuning benches, proper equipment that goes along with that could be anything from our files to scraper sharpeners. We've got brushes to brush out the boards. So those things are all components that go into the tuning piece of it. For additional equipment, the office is set up with extra bits and pieces for prosthetics. We've got extra pylons. We've got extra bolts. I've got 2 jars full of not only snowboard bolts, but bolts that fit prosthetic legs. So we try and keep enough stuff on hand that if somebody has an issue with a foot or has an issue with a leg, that we've got what we need to do a repair or to make adjustments or even to adapt that foot. A big thing that we use in snowboarding, and you'll find in instruction or when you're doing elite level riding or competition riding, a lot of amputees find it's helpful to have a wedge under their prosthesis. So that would be in the heel of the board or of the boot, excuse me. And so we've got a drawer that's full of wedges, and those wedges range in size and width. So those things are extremely important. And then, yeah, we've got first aid kits. We've got another big piece of what we have here in the office is an area where people can get a good warm up, do a good warm up routine and a cool down. So we've got a stationary bike in here. We've got power bands, we've got rollers and those types of things. So people can come in the morning and do a warm up routine. And then after we're done training, they can do a cool down.
Yeah, that's great information. Yeah, one more thing to add in. I know that Dan's got his program, which is a huge tool that's utilized quite a bit, is having a TV that's in there and being able to get video, be able to use movement analysis after you've been working with some athletes on snow. So be able to come back into the office, go to a live TV shot of what you've been working on is something else that really helps for athletes. And especially is something that's just that instant feedback that's awesome. Yeah, thanks, Dan. A couple other things that Reggie and I mentioned the last few weeks. It's always good to have a snowboard tool with you, whether it's a Leatherman or anything else you can just kind of throw in your pocket there. So that way, if you do have any equipment issues on the hill, you can always tighten up your bindings and sort out your gear on the hill, which is helpful. And especially if you have a prosthesis, being able to have those parts and pieces with you to fix stuff. Dan's always carrying a backpack with him with gear when he's working with a lot of athletes, just to make sure everybody's covered. Great points, Dan. We'll go to that next slide. And then once again, like Dan just mentioned, the setup and breakdown time, setting your board up, being able to get into your office space, jumping on an exercise bike or working with power bands, all those things, being able to cool down. That's the stuff that's critical for being able to get on the snow and perform the best on the snow with your programs, with your athletes. That time for taking care of your board and getting that set up is going to make your experience best as possible. Some other things we'll jump into there, the instructor specialties and credentials. Like Dan's program, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what you've got with the type of athletes you're working with, and how you're helping guide them towards their Paralympic goals. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind speaking about that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So have we have a small staff here. We've got about 3 in and out aside from myself, but everybody's got our instructor certifications through Professional Ski Instructors Association, and then we additionally we really lean heavily on the USASA coaches certifications. So that goes from a level 100 up to a 200 or 300. Is this what you're talking about, Kat? Just to be clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, all of our staff is either 200 or 300 or 300, and so it's really important, I think, for when you're dealing with athletes at this high level, that you kind of have a knowledge base that goes from just instruction but to coaching, because it's different. Instruction is different than coaching. Coaching becomes fine tuning, and it's small details that create a great athlete. And through those certifications, through those USASA certifications, you become trained in not only on snow stuff, but off snow stuff. So all those things are pretty critical. And we actually make sure that all of our athletes have gone through the level 100 coaches instruction certification. So I think it's an important component, because if you can teach it, oftentimes that leads to better learning, right? So, that's our basic outline for our staff and then for our athletes. And here at AAS, I'll expand on this a little bit. We've got Copper Mountain as a partner, who's a fantastic partner of ours. We've got at our fingertips Woodward at Copper, which is a great facility that allows us to do some training inside. We've really incorporated movement exercise into our training regimen. So that's being on a trampoline, that's being on mats and doing tumbling. We're trying to create more body awareness, and we believe that really plays a big role into the on snow stuff. So another specialty thing that we have here is the availability of Woodward at Copper. I think you could probably achieve the same thing at like your local rec center. And Woodward at Copper also supplies us with a fantastic snowboard park, which the terrain there, we've got our very beginner terrain, our intermediate, and our upper level or pro level. And so the athletes, this pipeline that we've created through USASA, and then the organization allows us to zoom athletes through this pipeline in a safe way, but accelerate their progression, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And so we just touched on quite a few of the topics there. One other thing to consider while you're doing some training or instruction as an athlete is what day of the week you're going to be able to get on the snow. If you can go in the middle of the week, usually it's a lot quieter. There's a lot more space on the mountain to learn and to be able to practice. Especially if you're getting into the higher levels. Midweek is a great time for getting on snow. The holidays and the weekends are typically pretty busy, especially like Dan's at Copper Mountain there, Breckenridge, some of these other places that are on the I-70 corridor or just outside of Denver. So the weekends are pretty busy. There's potentially thousands and thousands of people that are going to be flocking on the weekends. And if you're coming out to learn and participate in a program, that can be kind of nerve wracking when you've got a ton of people that are on the snow. So, getting into the schedule considerations here, the weather and the time of the week is something to definitely think about if you're going to join in with the program. See if they have availability, and definitely see if it's got a history of being busier on the weekends. One other thing to add in there right now is just with COVID-19, different mountains have different reservation systems or ways of maneuvering to get onto the mountain. So definitely try to check in with wherever you're going, whatever mountain you're going to participate with, to make sure that you can actually get on the mountain for the weekend. I know our mountain here is already booked this weekend for Saturday, Sunday. It's already full. totally full for the amount of people they're going to allow onto the mountain. So that's something else with right now is to check with your programs for sure. And then that final consideration is with altitude. If you're coming in to participate with the program and you're coming in from sea level, you might want to try to get in a day or two early to try to get acclimated to where you are. I know Copper Mountain, where Dan's at, there is sits close to 9,000 feet, and some of the lifts take you directly to 12,000 feet. So you're going to experience a whole different level of fatigue, and potentially end up having some issues with headaches and some things like that that are due to altitude. So those are definitely some things you want to prepare for getting your schedule set with working with a program ahead of time. Just make sure those bases are all covered. Thanks, Dan. Lily, if you want to go to that next one, I know Dan just kind of highlighted a few of those with the PSIA, the Aussie adaptive certifications that go along with that. On the adaptive side, you've got a level 1 through 3 for adaptive snowboarding. And like Dan mentioned, with USASA, that's an amateur snowboarding association, and they've partnered with the Dan and the adaptive programs around the country to have adaptive specific snowboard racing and competitions, which is amazing. USASA has been a huge partner for adaptive snowboarding for close to 20 years now. And through their certifications, they have more coaching specific certifications, which is incredible. Like Dan said, you can really help fine tune some of those points with athletes. On to the next one, the adaptive specialties that are out there. Ski Spectacular is one of the premier events in the world as far as bringing together education side and training side, as well as there's a race camp that's attached with Ski Spectacular, and then the amount of military servicemen and women that come in for that event is truly amazing. We usually have anywhere from 700 to 800 people that come in for that event in Breckenridge. And Move United, the Ski Spec event is truly one of those events that's helped start our season, our ski and snowboard season, and it's something that's critical for just getting into the culture and into the environment of skiing and snowboarding. Dan, you want to maybe take the next couple talking points there, as far as training, education, just some of the common stuff that we deal with programs and dealing with athletes and in general.
Yeah, I can try and take a stab there. See, disability awareness and etiquette. So I think it's such an interesting topic, and especially right now. I've had interesting conversations recently with a number of adaptive individuals who are very adamant that the word disabled is to describe the community. And so I think it's just things that's important to have open dialogue and have an open mind and be just aware of how the individual that you're either working with, or if you are the individual, be vocal and clear about how you want to be approached, talked about. It's just, I think it's one of those issues where it requires a lot of communication in an open channel. So it's important to know, that whoever you're speaking with, that's who's important, because but what I guess my point is, what it's becoming is very individual. It's kind of a choice that we're finding that a lot of people are kind of making for themselves. And so I think it's just an important thing to be very open-minded and ask a lot of questions and listen, be very attentive when it comes to those types of things. When it comes to my athletes, as an example, this kind of doesn't even relate to disability, but when we're racing, when we're at a very high level competition, a world championships or a World Cup, when an athlete gets into the gates, that's their moment, right? That's their moment before they pull out of the gates. And it's the time where they have to focus on the task ahead. And it's only a minute down the track, right? But in order to do that properly, each individual has a process. And some people want a coach at KEP to go up and give them a pat on the back or crack a joke to break the ice and bring a smile to their face so that they get down that track quicker. Some people just want to block everything out and be focused on themselves. They don't want you to even come within 6 feet. So that type of thing, you've got to be very open and have a dialogue with everybody about how where they are comfortable and what works for them. Common disability considerations, I think kind of that hits that. Modifications, I guess, can you explain to me this one, or do you want to take this one, or I'm happy to try if I can understand. Is this modifications within gear or?
It's within everything. It's within your day. Like if you have special considerations with your mountain that maybe you can use a ski school line and some things like that. Those are all things that you can help. Instead of having to skate an extra 30 or 40 yards to get into the main line, sometimes you have some things like that that are pretty cool with your program, that where your adaptive athletes can use certain lanes and have some advantages, so that way they have a better experience on snow. There's definitely some stuff within programs and within different organizational policies that are set for what you can do. I know that it's a Move United policy to have the bar down if there's a bar available for the ski lift. So there's some things like that you definitely want to do to ensure safety and kind of cover everything on that end. There's quite a few things as far as like Dan was mentioning with the disability awareness. A lot of times if you see somebody that's snowboarding down the hill, and Reggie can chime in, he's on now. Reggie actually wears shorts quite a few times when he's on snow, just to highlight the fact that he's riding with his prosthesis. Some of our athletes that are above knee amputees will ride with their pant leg cut off, so you can actually see that knee, so you can see that mechanical knee in the system. It also helps them so they can work on it faster instead of having to deal with a pant leg that's there. But there's some cool stuff that's there that actually highlights the disability, kind of highlights the fact that somebody might be a little bit different than the rest of the skiers and snowboarders going down the hill. And usually that's something that we always get a positive response. If you see somebody that's cruising down the hill in a different manner, it's just something that's really cool. We always get some cheers from the people that are riding the lifts and stuff when we're riding. There's quite a few athletes that are, you can tell that they've got prosthesis and stuff. Reggie, you there? You got anything to add on this one?
I absolutely. I can share a story with everybody, and that complements that specific topic. I remember being at Copper Mountain with Amy Purdy, Dan's wife, and we were sitting on the top of a berm off to the side of a run, and we both had on long pants, so you couldn't see our prosthesis. Amy's a bilateral below knee amputee like myself, and we were both just sitting there chilling. And there was another couple, a husband and wife, that were skiers, and they were sitting about 10, 20 yards from us, off to the side doing their own thing. And there was a skier, a one-legged skier, a three-tracker, and he had outriggers, and he came flying by us. And all four of us, just took note of his form and just the grace that he had as he went by down the run. And we were inspired, even though we were amputees. I mean, we were inspired as well. But we listened to the conversation from the husband and wife that were skiers that were sitting close to us, and they said, "Man, that is amazing! Look at what he can do. That's just, adaptive skiing has come so far." And Amy and I just looked at each other and we smiled and said, "If they only knew." you know, the two of us were both bilateral below knee amputee snowboarders. So I think, when you when you overcome an injury like an amputation or a spinal cord injury, and you're pursuing your goal of whatever sport it is that you're participating in, or whatever profession, I think that deep down inside we all want to give back. We all want to inspire the world. We want to help other people that are going through a similar situation, or a situation that they may just need a little bit of an uplift. And so it's really important for a lot of us adaptive athletes to showcase, our situation, our disability. I know as I'm getting older, if I can take advantage of some shorter lift lines by skirting into the ski school lift line, and not have any pushback from some of the lifties, when they see my prosthetic legs, they don't say a word. They say, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Here, you come to the front of the line." And that saves me. I'm at altitude. It saves me, with some of my endurance. I don't have to burn as much energy waiting in a line with all these, mob of people. I'm going to take advantage of that right now. I think I've paid my dues. I can take advantage of that. There was a time where I wouldn't do that. But yeah, take advantage of the organizational policies, and then you go out there and showcase your disability so you can make somebody else's day brighter.
Yeah, that's a key point there is just, energy conservation. If you're working with a program, usually there's some benefits that are attached. And that is something that's, you want to try to save your energy for the snow. So even getting to the mountain from wherever the program is, that accessibility is usually a little bit easier than some of the other places. And that's something too that's, being able to leave your snowboard gear, or being able to leave extra parts or pieces that you might need at like Dan's program office, which is pretty close there to the base area. That's a huge benefit for being able to have the best experience on snow as possible. So on our next slide here, we're looking at recruiting. How do adaptive programs find adaptive athletes? A lot of times there's community efforts that are involved. I know, like here with the Adaptive Sports Center at Crested Butte, we've got a partnership with the community kids, which is with the school, and we have kids that come up once a week to ski with us. We've also got an adult program that's centered around the Gunnison Valley here. We usually have about 15 to 20 participants within our local area that rely upon that partnership with the Adaptive Sports Center to be able to get on snow. Outside of this zone is where we get most of our big groups that come in, and a lot of our athletes come in from definitely outside of this area. If you're running a program such as Dan's, how do you end up trying to find more athletes out there that are Paralympic hopefuls? That takes a lot of effort. Trying to do some events, some one-off events at your own mountain to draw people in. There's always phone calls and emails that can take place to get people prepared for getting in, but really that day on the snow is where you can get people hooked on snowboarding. And I know Dan's run quite a few of those programs. Dan, if you wouldn't mind speaking about that and how you actually work with Copper Mountain. I know you've got access to the race course and some other things there that you touched on a little bit, but if you could highlight a few more of those things, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, a cornerstone of our organization, a huge chunk of the foundation is collaboration. Collaboration. Try not to reinvent the wheel and work with other organizations that have similar mission statements or have verticals that overlap with your organization. And I think that that's just smart business, but it works great for the adaptive community because it creates a farther reach, right? And so when we collaborate with organizations like USASA or with our local Copper Mountain, we come together for things like social media content or social media campaign, or just recently we did something that's called Give Back Wednesdays here. And so a certain amount of the proceeds from ticket sales went to support my organization, which is really fantastic. And so as many of those things as we can connect to within our community here in Summit County, within our resort, through other organizations, like I said, with similar goals and missions where there's overlaps, like USASA or like Move United, we try and do what we can to participate in those things, create awareness around what we're doing, support other organizations that have similar missions, and support what they're doing. In that effort, working together, I think you really create the awareness that's needed to grow a sport like snowboarding. Snowboarding's kind of typically been a little bit of a fringe sport. Certainly when Kep and I started, Kep really had a big hand in helping to create the foundation that is Adaptive Action Sports that we founded in 2005, and he came on in 2006. And was a big piece of what we are now. But when we started this thing, it was really important to us that we had that breadth, and we were trying something new with snowboarding because it was a little bit of the fringe thing, but that we had that scope and that vision to try something new, but include other organizations like USASA to help grow what we're doing. And so here at Copper Mountain specifically, it's great. We do have the ability to use border cross track that's up. We actually have some of the U.S. team over here. Coach Mike Jennings is over here with Mike Schultz and Joe Lieben and Zach Miller, and they're training on our course with us and our Adaptive Action Sports athletes a couple of days. So it's great that we have that opportunity, and we've been able to utilize that. So, I think there's a real specific pipe. It's find a chapter of Disabled Sports USA to get yourself on a board, to get yourself comfortable on a snowboard, to get your gear set up right, to have somebody like Reggie come in and tell you you need a wedge in the back and help you figure out how to get down the slope. If it's exciting, then you decide the next step might be a little bit of competition, and you could find a local mountain that has a USASA program, and then you find a program that has more of an elite level training. And so we're lucky enough here to have all of those three things stacked up on top of each other. So we really have the ability to turn athletes, to really welcome new athletes in at that beginner level, get them excited about it, and then feed them into the USASA adaptive division, which then leads into the Paralympic World Para Snowboard programming.
Yeah, like Dan mentioned, a lot of it there with like Reggie actually got certified with quite a few other adaptive snowboarders with AAS a few years back, and we're always looking to try to train new people. We're always looking for volunteers to help out. This is still a nonprofit sector. There's the amount of people that we rely on to help continue to grow the sport is huge. And we also travel a lot for outreach, whether it's during the winter or during the summer. Reggie, if you wouldn't mind speaking to that, how much you travel and how you're always an ambassador for just getting people moving in general, but then how you're always kind of promoting snowboarding is that other avenue for getting out because it's one of your loves and passions. If you have any stories, I know you've got plenty of stories to share for your crazy experiences on snow, but the amount that goes into it off the snow, if you wouldn't mind sharing any of that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started snowboarding, and was in 2007, I took my first lesson at Camelback Mountain in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And back then, there was no adaptive snowboarding whatsoever in the Northeast that I was lucky to take advantage of. And so I had to go out west, and that's where I met Kep. That's where I met Dan and a lot of the other adaptive snowboarders. And I found my community. I found the resources and the education and the training that I needed to get to learn how to properly snowboard as an amputee. So then the progression went from, okay, I'm learning now. Let me share some of the information that I've learned with other newcomers, new amputee and adaptive snowboarders. And one of my passions was trying to get people started on the Northeast, in the Northeast corridor, trying to get some programs up and spark some interest. And how do you do that? You just got to show up. You got to go knock on doors. You got to go to these resorts that don't know that adaptive snowboarding is a thing, and there's a need for resources, there's a need for volunteers, there's a need for coaches and instructors, because there's a lot of adaptive athletes, adaptive recreational athletes that want to learn how to snowboard. So it takes traveling to these mountains that don't have established programs like they do in the West. I mean, what I've seen over the years is, the West Coast, those mountains in Colorado and Utah, they're just so much further ahead when it comes to adaptive snow sports than the East Coast. I live on the East Coast, so of course, I want to do all that I can to help promote the sport. And it takes going to these mountains, these little smaller mountains, and showing up in a pair of shorts, riding, networking, getting on social media, talking to these mountains, contacting them. Hey, do you have a discount program for adaptive riders? If not, how come you don't? Let's start that conversation. And it takes people seeing other adaptive riders out there to get the interest. I mean, it just takes the travel. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the work if you want to see effective change. So I've been fortunate to be able to do that, to travel to a lot of different local mountains and take my knowledge that I've learned out from the West Coast, lots of programs like Dan's, and implement that so people here that can't travel, that don't have the resources to travel to the West Coast, they can take advantage of the awesomeness that is adaptive snowboarding. So it's been really rewarding for me to be able to plant these seeds where they're needed and network with other people. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Reg. I mean, it definitely is something. We've had some amazing Paralympic athletes, including Daniel's wife, Amy, who's from Las Vegas, Nevada. That's a place that's not known for its skiing and snowboarding. So it's definitely one of those things. If if you can travel a little bit, get on snow anywhere, you can make it all happen. So our next thing here, we'll cover some policies. Safe sport is one of the big things. Getting involved with Ski Spectacular or any organization or any event, you typically have to go through Safe Sport. It's just it's a common core training that's part of being a part of sports now. That's a standard. Safe Sport will guide you through everything that you need to have, all the knowledge that you need to have to work with athletes of all ages, with any of our adaptive programs. A couple of other things that we were talking about in our pre-meeting for the essential eligibility criteria is, once again, any of us that are contracted through Move United for Ski Spectacular or any of the events, or if you're working for an adaptive program, you're typically going to have to go through a background check, potentially get fingerprinted if that's one of the policies that's there for your program, and definitely go through Safe Sport and be vetted to make sure you're okay working with an adaptive population or for working with children. And this is one of the things that ensures that you're going to be doing the best job possible that you're still staying current with all your certifications, that you're up to date with all the new training regimens that are out there, and everything else. So it's the policies that are in place with a lot of the programs are pretty much standard across the board. They're trying to make sure that everything is top notch as possible. Um, and going forward with that, that next one about medications, you know, if you're working with an adaptive athlete who's who's taking a couple different medications for whatever reasons, um, that's always a good thing to cover. Make sure that you've gone through all those meds, just in case something happens on snow. You're basically their caretaker, their primary source of protection. So going through meds and all those things, and being well versed before you get on snow can help, just in case something ever happens. And also just being able to guide people towards, maybe use a restroom before you get out on snow, because once you're out on snow you don't necessarily have some of those options. Um, and then when you take a break, making sure you can kind of get set for some things like that.
Could I add
um,
something right quick, Kep?
yeah, of
Also,
course.
you want to touch base with, make sure your athlete, make sure you as a coach or an instructor want to know about some of the psychological or emotional issues that your athletes or your student may have. They may be claustrophobic, don't want to be around a whole lot of people, in the lift line. They may need extra space to feel secure. You got a lot of people that have TBIs that get triggered from some of the explosions that they may hear from avalanche control on the mountain. So it's really, we need to identify that and be cognizant of it, of the needs of some of our students. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
just put that in
well,
there with medications.
that's an incredible point to add in. Is not only are we trying to facilitate snowboarding, there's so many other elements that you have to cover, or that you can cover, just within a day of snowboarding, with adaptive athletes. And that's it's a great point, Reggie. Is not only are we there to try to get people to make better turns and become more proficient snowboarders, is there's the whole other side of it, and that goes back to the certifications and the training, to be well versed on how to handle different situations and different athletes. Um, and that actually highlights the next point. A lot of programs that you go to, the ratio is usually a 2-to-1, coach, instructor, or volunteer to athlete ratio. I know here at the Adaptive Sports Center, we usually try to put an instructor and a volunteer out with the snowboarder, um, and that way you've got a visual representation that can happen. You can have your volunteer maybe try to carve some turns, and they get your participant to follow them. And as the instructor, you've got the ability to kind of do some movement analysis and really see what you can do to help them out to get better, or vice versa. They can follow the instructor down the hill, and the volunteer might kind of hang behind and create a barrier. Um, Especially if you're working with visually impaired athletes, or anybody with disability, it just helps having that little extra space, um, and comfort of not knowing that you're going to get run over. So a lot of times, and even within higher level uh, coaching programs like Dan's, we still have quite a few athletes um, that are there, but we always have, try to keep that coaching staff um, just about equal or an advantage if we can. That way, you've got somebody that's able to video. You've got some eyes on everybody, um, just in case there's an injury or something like that. You've got the ability to get people back down the hill safely and still have your program operating as normal. Um, Reggie, if you want to maybe tackle the next one, Reggie or Dan, you guys are more than welcome to jump in on the couple of the next ones there.
Go for it, Dan, with behavior.
Yeah.
I don't know how to
Um,
behave sometimes.
uh, well, you can't take the kid out of the snowboarder. I don't think it's part of the game. Um, so yeah, let's see where we're at behavior.
Yeah.
Is that where we're at? Okay.
Yeah, we got
Um,
about 5 minutes, cover
so
a couple things here.
okay, good deal. Yeah. I think having a quality culture within your program for your athletes is really important. We strive for that here at Adaptive Action Sports to make sure that we've got a good crew of guys and gals that are behaving in a way that you would expect civilized human being to behave on the mountain, and then certainly with our other athletes, new athletes, I think it's really important to have an environment and a culture that accepts new athletes in a way where they feel very welcome. There's no question of whether or not they're part of the family. It's important for a number of reasons. It boosts confidence in that individual in general on a day to day, but it also creates a better learning environment on the mountain. And so, we as my staff, myself included, and athletes who really were positive to that doesn't only go for newcomer athletes, but it's also your teammates who you're training alongside of. Creating quality behavior and a good environment is just really good for learning and progression. And then that rolls right over into the parent and guardian communication. Being very honest, I think, is also critical when it comes to communicating with a parent or guardian. But being setting a tone that is very positive and builds the parent's confidence in your abilities, leaning on certifications, leaning on credentials, leaning on past experiences, leaning on previous accomplishments, I think is important when it comes to that. But making sure that they're aware of everybody, that they meet everybody, and leaning on all of the things that we are required to have when it comes to safe sport, and our insurances and those types of things are also important, not only for the participant or for the individual or for the client, but also for our staff and for our well-being and our peace of mind, all the way to the executive board. So I think that behavioral piece of it bleeds right into the parent guardian communication.
Yeah, and so the next couple things here we can cover real quick, and then maybe get to some questions. Is budget. It's how much is it going to cost you to get to your local mountain, to get on snow, to join in with the Movie United program and be able to get out there and get some turns. Your scheduling, can you get out during the middle of the week when the mountain's not as busy versus the weekends, or whatever you can allow for your time. And then for us, it is instructors and coaches. We're always trying to gauge the abilities of an athlete. If you see somebody that's pretty excited about snowboarding, and they've got some ability, some general ability to start, we're always going to try to nourish that and foster that to help continue somebody on their path. We've got quite a few athletes that have joined in that didn't think that they'd ever be Paralympic athletes that became Paralympians. They started out, they were pretty good at some stuff. They're like, yeah, I'll give this a go. And next thing you know, they're traveling around the world, getting a chance to represent the United States at World Cups, and then go on to become Paralympians, which is amazing. Back to developing the relationships that you need to have with your local mountain or resort. Your home mountain can help you create those lifelong memories. And if you're able to do that in an adaptive manner, there's so many things that you can do, so many positives that you can bring to your local mountain um, uh, by fostering that relationship. Um, Developing partnerships. Dan and Reggie and I, we've all traveled quite a bit together, known each other for a long time. We've got lifelong friendships from snowboarding, which has been amazing. Through those friendships, um, some of our athletes have been able to garner sponsorships with some big companies that have continued to help them stay on track with snowboarding, which is amazing. Um, yeah, and a few more things here is just getting out, getting certified and trained properly. If you're interested in joining in with the program, you can do that, and that's one of the things that the quickest, easiest ways of getting on snow. Um, Reggie's had his adaptive cert for a very long time, has helped so many people on snow. Dan's program and his coaching staff there has helped a ton of people further their snowboarding careers. And yeah, the last one to highlight is to have fun. That's the reason we've all got involved with snowboarding. That's the reason we're all still here, trying to share the stoke and the love of snowboarding. Um, it's been a real proud moment for me to do some stuff with Reggie over the years, to work with Dan over the years, for all the athletes, all the memories we have. It's been amazing. So we'd like to open it up if there's any questions out there in Zoom land. Not sure if Emily or Lily was going to facilitate these, but we'll try to answer any questions that you all have.
Yeah, I'll just remind everyone, please send questions in the chat if you have them. But I have a question about first time lessons. So if you're an administrator, what are things that you should consider for someone's very first time with equipment fitting, how long the lesson should be, like what are best practices for someone's very first lesson?
Dan, you want to try to tackle that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, obviously, I'm sure that all organizations listening to this probably have an intake form. So obviously, that's our first step, is an intake form before the athlete even arrives. So they're aware of any of the things that we previously discussed. What's the disability specifically? Are there considerations when it comes to medication, when it comes to mobility into the facility? Those types of things we learn from our intake form. So it's important to have a thorough intake form. From there, we would do here at Adaptive Action Sports, and sure, like all the other organizations, we do an assessment day. So that first day, typically when I have a snowboarder come into Adaptive Action Sports, we'd like them to be here for several days in a row. That's ideal. And on the first day, we do an assessment, and typically that's done before we even get on a snowboard. So we bring them into the office and we do some movement. We look at the gear that they're using, if they've brought the gear. If we're providing gear, we make sure we've got good fitment. We look at the prosthetic. We decide if we need to add anything like wedging, or if we need to make adjustments in the pylon, if we need to make adjustments in the actual prosthesis itself or in the foot that they're using. And then from there, once we get that gear dialed in, we go to the snow. And that's usually typically like a half day for the first assessment. And it's on a beginner run. Most of the time, we don't even get on a lift that first time. So we're just hiking up a slope that's designated as beginner and learner. And we just practice some basic movements, put the binding on the front foot, we practice skating, and then from there we practice some basic turns, all of which would come if you did the level 1 PSIA or Aussie. So after that first day, we kind of have an assessment on those gear needs, if those need additional modifications after our first day on snow. And then from there, we should try and shoot to the moon. Let's get on a ski lift and do some progression, learn how to really turn our snowboard, learn where our weight needs to be, and start working through the process of learning how to turn that snowboard. And of course, it's going to come with some falling and those things. And so that's why it's great to have several days. If you're really encouraging somebody to learn how to snowboard for the first time. It's not a single day process, and it's better if it's multiple days. It's better if they're not scattered across the calendar year. It's if you can get somebody in there for 3 to 4 days in a row, you see a significant progression that by the end of that trip, they're making turns. They got a smile on their face. They forgot about the first day when they fell 20 times. And so I think that's what's required to really get somebody moving and in a safe way and hooked into the sport.
Thank you. That was great information. Still, if anyone has questions, send them our way in the chat. But for now, I would just like to say thank you to our panelists, to Reggie and Dan and Kep. Thank you so much. Like I said at the beginning, this session is being recorded, and we'll add it to our Move United YouTube page, along with the other sessions in case you're interested. And please tune into our next webinar. It'll be next week. We'll focus on snowboard races and competitions, but this one will be at a different time from previous webinars. So this one will be Wednesday, February 17th from 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern time, which is different from the other ones. And you can modify your registration using the link in the chat box, so you can keep your same email and all that, and just add another session to the same confirmation. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, just head to the chat for additional information, and head to our YouTube page if you want to watch this back or send it to a friend.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining today. Hopefully we'll see you all next week. And thanks again to Emily, Alexis, Lily, everybody at Move United. I think you guys do so much work behind the scenes. And thanks to Daniel for joining in today. There's a ton of great information.
Yep.
And we'll have some more information for you all next week.
Thank
Hope you can get
Kep.
on snow this next week, everybody.
Thank you, Kep. Thank you, Dan, Emily, Lily,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for attending, everybody.